My husband has a second family, and they thought I was the side chick.
I always thought my marriage was fine, not perfect, not some storybook level romance or anything, but stable, predictable. The kind of marriage where you just know what your partner likes for breakfast, which jokes are going to make them roll their eyes, which fights will blow over in an hour. 7 years in, Daniel and I had these routines that felt, worn in like an old sweater. Comfortable. So familiar. Looking back now, I realized that exact comfort, it made me blind. The first weird thing, it didn't even register as weird at the time. Daniel had started picking up more of these overnight shifts at work. And because he worked in logistics, unpredictable schedules weren't exactly shocking. Trucks run late, shipments get delayed, emergencies happen at all hours. At least that's what I told myself. Every single time he'd come home exhausted and barely say 2 words to me before just crashing into bed. I remember this one week where he was gone 3 nights in a row. He just kissed my forehead, told me he loved me, grabbed his keys, and left like it was nothing. And I stayed up watching TV with a blanket wrapped around me, just telling myself, it'll calm down, it's just a busy period, it always does. But it didn't. The more shifts he picked up, the more distant he got. First it was emotional, and then it was physical. He'd walk through the door like he was a guest, someone who only lived there part-time. He'd give me these half smiles, these distracted nods, vague explanations that just didn't invite any more questions. And still, I didn't push. I didn't want to be that wife, the nagging one. I thought giving him space was the healthy thing to do. Then came the second thing, his phone. Daniel used to be so relaxed with it, he'd leave it lying around, screen up, sometimes not even locked, right on the couch. But then it became his second heartbeat. The second it buzzed, he'd flip it face down with this quick, almost automatic movement. If he was across the room, he'd literally jog over to silence it before I could even glance at it. One time I joked, I said, "Dang, is it the president calling?" He laughed. But it was too loud, like the joke actually made him uncomfortable. "It's just work, babe. Seriously." Sure. I tried to laugh with him, but something about the way he said it just didn't sit right. Still, I reasoned with myself. Okay, stress, work. He's tired. He'll tell me if something's wrong. Except he didn't. The third red flag was not subtle. It wasn't small, and it wasn't something I could talk myself out of. I got into his car one morning because mine wouldn't start. I reached under the passenger seat to grab my water bottle, and my fingers just brushed against something plastic. I pulled it out, and I just stared at it. It was a little blue dinosaur toy, a toddler-sized triceratops with chipped paint. At first, my brain didn't jump to cheating. My first thought was, literally, whose kid did he drive? Because we don't have children. We talked about them, sure, but in this fuzzy, maybe later kind of way. We definitely weren't buying toys or giving rides to random kids. I waited until he got home that night. I casually held up the toy and asked, "Hey, whose is this?" He barely even looked at it. "Oh, one of the guys brought his kid to the office. Must dropped it." His answer came so fast and so smoothly that I almost felt stupid for even asking. I just nodded slowly, but something in his expression, it felt tight, controlled, like he was performing calmness instead of actually being calm. For the next 2 weeks, that toy just sat in the back of my mind like an itch I couldn't scratch. Nothing else seemed obviously off, but at the same time, everything felt off. Daniel was there physically, he was eating dinner with me, watching the same shows, but his attention felt miles away. I'd ask how his day was, he'd say fine. I'd ask if he wanted to go out on the weekend, and he'd say he was too tired or had work to catch up on. And all these little things just stacked up. His laundry smelled like a different detergent some days. He started shaving more often, especially on the nights he didn't come home. He was spending more time looking at his reflection before leaving the house. But I still didn't jump to cheating. I thought maybe he's stressed. Maybe something happened at work that he's not telling me. Maybe I'm not doing enough to support him. Then, one Friday afternoon, everything just shattered. I was at home in sweatpants, folding laundry on the couch with a podcast playing in the background. My phone rang with a number I didn't recognize. I almost let it go to voicemail, but something made me answer. "Hello," I said, and a woman's voice immediately snapped back, loud and angry. "Stop texting my man," I phrased. The laundry just fell out of my hands. "Sorry." "You heard me," she said. Her tone was sharp enough to cut skin. "He told me you're crazy, but this is embarrassing. Move on." My pulse just kicked up. I couldn't even form a full thought yet. "Who are you talking about?" I asked. She said his name, Daniel. And my stomach just bottomed out like the floor had dropped right out from under me. I tried to stay calm, but my voice came out all tight. "I don't think you understand. I know exactly who you are," she spat. "You're the ex who can't let go. He said you keep trying to start drama." "I'm his wife." Silence. The kind of silence that just makes the air feel heavier. "What?" she whispered. "I'm his wife," I repeated, making sure she heard every single word. Then the line went dead. I just sat there staring at my phone like it might morph into something that made any sense. My heartbeat was so loud I could hear it in my ears. The whole room felt smaller, like the walls were inching in on me. 20 minutes later, I got a text from her. "Can we meet, please? I need to talk." Her tone was completely different. Shaken, apologetic, almost frightened. I didn't know what I was walking into, but I agreed to meet her at a cafe near her neighborhood. I drove there on complete autopilot, every possible scenario flashing through my head, and each one was worse than the last. When I parked, I had to sit for a full minute just to steady my breathing. Then she walked in, and she wasn't alone. She had a toddler holding her hand and a baby on her hip. And instantly I understood. The blue dinosaur, the unexplained shifts, the phone flipping, the emotional distance. He wasn't working late, he was with them. She introduced herself as Marissa. Her voice was soft now, nothing like that harsh tone on the phone. She apologized again before she even sat down. The toddler was hiding shyly behind her leg, clutching a scuffed animal. The baby on her hip was chewing on her necklace. We sat across from each other in this tiny cafe with low lighting and quiet music, and for a second I felt like I had stepped into someone else's life. Then she started talking, and everything, every single thing, fell into place. Marissa didn't waste any time. The moment we sat down, she unlocked her phone with this shaky breath, like even holding it felt heavy. She slid across the table to me, screen up. The first picture was Daniel holding her toddler. Not awkwardly, not like someone just posing for a polite photo. He was sitting on a couch with the kid curled right into his side, one tiny hand gripping Daniel's shirt while they watched a movie together. His arm was around the child in a way that just made my chest tighten. He looked comfortable. The second photo was of him holding the baby. The baby was laughing, grabbing his beard, and Daniel was smiling in this soft, easy way that I hadn't seen in a long, long time. It wasn't a forced smile or a tired one. It was a smile like he belonged there, like he'd been there 1,000 times before. I felt like I was watching someone else's husband. "He told me you two separated years ago," Marissa said quietly, her fingers trembling as she scrolled through more pictures. "He said the divorce was almost final. He said you kept trying to get him back." Every sentence was like a punch I couldn't dodge. She kept going. "He told me you were obsessed with him, that you wouldn't let him move on, that you kept calling and texting him even though he blocked you." My heart was pounding so hard it actually hurt. I never called him excessively, I never stalked him, I never begged him for anything, but he'd built this whole character of me, this unstable ex who couldn't let go, and he used it to explain away anything that didn't fit his lies. Marissa pulled up screenshots of texts he'd sent her, him whining about how draining I was, how he felt trapped by the past, how he wished I'd just move on and leave him alone. All lies, all so carefully constructed. Then she showed me a video of him blowing out candles on a small birthday cake while her toddler clapped and squealed. There were decorations on the wall behind him, balloons, a hand-drawn banner that said, "Happy birthday, Daddy Daniel." "Daddy," I had to look away. "I didn't know," she whispered. "I swear to you, I didn't know he was married." "I believe you," I said, and I really meant it. It was painfully obvious she believed his version of things, because he made damn sure she never saw mine. Then she told me something that made everything click into place with this bitter, awful clarity. "He's with us on weekends. I only see him during the day sometimes when he says he's taking breaks from work. He said your schedules didn't overlap anymore because you two couldn't stand each other." My breath just caught in my throat. That explained the weekend shifts, the overnight stays, the emotional distance, the new cologne I didn't buy, the shaved face he usually didn't bother with, the weird laundry detergent smell, the toy in the car, all of it. He wasn't cheating casually. He wasn't having a fling or some short-term affair. He had a life with her, a routine, a home, her kids. Kids that weren't even his, biologically. They saw him as a father figure. They had drawings of him on their fridge. She showed me one. A stick figure man with a big smile holding hands with two little stick figure kids. And above it, the toddler had scribbled, "Daddy Carlino." I felt something inside me just crumble in a way I can't even explain. The worst part wasn't the cheating. It wasn't that he lied. It wasn't even that he made another woman believe she was the main person in his life. It was that he allowed a child to call him dad. He let a baby fall asleep on his chest. He let two innocent kids form attachments to him that he had absolutely no intention of honoring. And he did all of that while coming home to me, eating dinner at our table, sleeping in our bed. I asked Marissa how long she'd known him. 3 years, she said. My mind just broke that sentence apart slowly, piece by piece. 3 years. He'd been with her for almost half our marriage. My throat tightened so much I could barely speak. "Why did you think I was texting him?" She looked down at the table. "He was acting weird, distracted. He didn't answer my calls one day. He said it was because you were starting again. He said he blocked you, but you kept finding ways to reach him. So when I saw your number come up on his phone, I thought..." She rubbed her forehead, embarrassed. "I thought you were trying to break us up." The irony was just, it wasn't lost on either of us. I wasn't the side chick. And she wasn't the villain. We were both living in different chapters of the exact same lie. We just sat in silence for a moment. The cafe was warm, there was low chatter, and the smell of coffee drifting around us. It felt so normal, so calm, which made the whole conversation feel even more unreal. "I want to confront him," she finally said, "but I don't want to do it alone." I nodded before she even finished her sentence. "I'll be there." Yeah. We agreed to meet the next evening at my house, the place he was supposed to come home to. The decision, it wasn't made out of rage or spite, it was just clarity. It was the understanding that he had built this situation, so he needed to face both sides of it without being able to run. The next day moved so painfully slow. Every hour dragged. I cleaned the house just to have something to do with myself. I barely ate. Every little sound made me jump. I kept replaying every moment of the last few years, just trying to find clues I'd missed. There were so many of them. But he hid everything so carefully, so thoroughly, that even if I had noticed, I don't know what I would have done with it. When evening came, I sat on the couch with my hands just clasped together. The sky outside was this pale blue, turning into dusk. The living room lights were dim. Everything just felt heavy. Then the doorbell rang. Marissa was standing there, holding her baby, the toddler beside her again. She looked nervous, but determined. Let them in. The toddler climbed onto the couch, hugging a stuffed animal. The baby made these soft, babbling noises. It was strangely peaceful. Then we heard Daniel's car pull into the driveway. The sound of the car door closing, footsteps approaching the door, keys jingling. I felt my heart just hammering against my ribs. When he opened the door and stepped inside, the look on his face was something I will never, ever forget. At first, it was confusion, deep, genuine confusion, like his brain couldn't comprehend why Marissa and her children were standing in our living room. Then fear, then realization, then guilt. And underneath all of it, just panic. He opened his mouth, but no sound came out. He looked between me and Marissa like someone searching for an exit in a windowless room, and that's when it truly hit him. Both of his worlds were finally in the same place, and there was nowhere left to run. For a second, none of us said anything. The only sound in the room was the baby making a soft cooing noise while the toddler shifted on the couch. Daniel's eyes just flicked around like he was looking for a script he forgot to memorize. What's going on?" he finally asked, and his voice just cracked. Marissa stood up slowly, adjusting the baby on her hip. She didn't raise her voice, she didn't yell, she just said, "We need to talk." He swallowed hard, his throat bobbing. "Why are you here? With them? What are you doing in my house? Your house," I repeated quietly. He flinched like the words actually stung him. I stood up too, keeping my distance, but I looked him straight in the eye. "Daniel, she knows everything. I know everything. We talked." His face just drained of all color. "Everything," he whispered. Marissa nodded. "Everything." Gore. For a moment, he looked like he might actually faint. He rubbed his forehead with both hands, pacing in these tiny, frantic steps. "You don't understand. You're both twisting things. I didn't mean..." He started breathing faster. "I didn't want this to happen." "You didn't want what to happen?" I asked. My voice was calm, but it was firm. "Us finding out. Or you getting caught?" He froze mid-step. His mouth opened, then closed again, like he was trying to pick the least incriminating answer and just failing at all of them. He finally said, "I never wanted to hurt either of you." Marissa let out this short, humorless breath. "You didn't want to hurt us, but you let my son call you dad. You let my baby fall asleep on your chest. You introduced yourself to my family. You celebrated holidays with us." "I was trying to be there for them," he snapped. "And what about being there for your actual wife?" I asked, not raising my voice. He turned to me, desperation all over his face. I was gonna tell you, I just needed time." "You had 3 years," I said quietly. He took a shaky breath. "It wasn't supposed to get this far. I thought it would just end on its own." "So your plan," I said slowly, "was to wait for one of us to disappear." He didn't answer. He didn't need to. His silence said everything. Marissa gently bounced the baby, who had started fussing. The toddler climbed down from the couch and walked over to her, grabbing her leg. She just smoothed the child's hair and looked at Daniel with this exhausted, disappointed expression that made him drop his gaze to the floor. "I believed everything you said," she told him. "I defended you. I told my family you were a good man, and all this time you were living 2 lies and lying to both of us." "I'm sorry," he whispered. The words just sounded empty, like he was trying them out to see if they'd fix anything. They didn't. "We're done," Marissa said simply. "I won't let you around my kids again. They deserve stability, and you're not capable of that." He looked like she'd slapped him, but he didn't argue. He couldn't. She walked past him with the baby on her hip and the toddler holding her hand. I walked them to the door. Before leaving, she turned to me and said, "I'm so sorry for what he made me think about you. You didn't deserve that." "You didn't either," I said, and I really, really meant it. When she left, the house fell silent. Daniel just sank onto the edge of the couch with his head in his hands. I stayed standing. I was not going to sit beside him like the past 24 hours didn't just flip my entire world upside down. "Do you have anything else to say?" I asked. He looked up slowly. I need help. I messed up. I know I messed up, but I love you. Please don't leave me." "I already did," I said softly. "You just didn't notice," he cried then, full on sobbing, his shoulders shaking. I didn't feel satisfaction or pity. I just felt done. Something inside me had snapped in a way that couldn't be undone. Not with apologies, not with promises, not with tears. I packed a suitcase that night, not because I was running, but because I needed space to breathe, space to think without the weight of his lies pressing on me. I stayed with a friend for a few days, and during that time, everything just unraveled for him. His parents called me in disbelief. He had told them we were separated and that he didn't want to burden them with the details. When I explained the truth, they apologized to me over and over again. His job found out too. Apparently all those emergency overnight shifts weren't approved. He'd been leaving early, taking long breaks, and just disappearing during work hours. Someone filed a complaint. He was suspended, then fired. Friends who thought he was the stand-up guy suddenly had questions he just couldn't answer. Marissa blocked him everywhere. Her family shut him out completely, and in the middle of all that fallout, he kept trying to call me. Voicemails, texts, long paragraphs about how he was lost and didn't know how to stop lying and needed someone to help him get better, but I wasn't going to be his therapist or his crutch or his excuse. I filed for divorce. The day the papers were served, he sent me one final message. "I can't believe you're giving up on us." I stared at the screen for a long moment before replying. "You gave up on us 3 years ago? I'm just catching up." And that was that. The strange thing is, once the dust settled, I didn't feel broken. I didn't feel angry forever. I felt relieved. The truth hurt, but it also set me free. I spent so long feeling like something was off without knowing what it was. Now I knew, and I could finally move forward. The story started with me sensing something wasn't right. It ended with clarity. I wasn't the side chick. I wasn't the unstable ex. I wasn't the background character in the life he built somewhere else. I was the only wife he ever had, and the one person he couldn't lie to forever. My mom is furious I won't fund my brother's lifestyle anymore, even though he makes more than me. I swear, I didn't realize how twisted my family dynamic was until the day my brother showed up at my door with a brand new luxury watch on his wrist while asking me to cover his rent. And to be fair, it didn't happen all at once. It was one of those slow burn situations where you don't notice the pattern until you're knee deep in it, wondering how you got there in the first place. Growing up, I was always labeled the responsible one. Me, the kid who got good grades without anyone reminding them. The one who packed their own lunch, remembered appointments, and double-checked homework. I wasn't perfect, but I was steady. Predictable. If someone in the family needed help with something paperwork-related, I was the one they called. Marcus, my younger brother, was different. He was charismatic, fun, spontaneous, and honestly pretty likable. But he was also reckless with everything: decisions, money, relationships, jobs, you name it. If life were a Monopoly board, he'd land on every tax square and still somehow find a way to buy Boardwalk using someone else's money. Our parents didn't just excuse it, they enabled it. If he blew his allowance on nonsense, they gave him more. If he skipped homework, they talked to his teachers. If he missed curfew, they blamed his friends. And every time he stumbled, they'd say, "He's sensitive," or "He can't handle stress like you do," or "You know your brother needs more support." Meanwhile, anytime I made a mistake, it was, "You're older. You should have known better." That line practically became the soundtrack of my childhood. As adults, the pattern didn't disappear, it just shifted. I lived within my means, I budgeted, I meal prepped, I made sure I never spent more than I earned. Marcus, however, used his paycheck the same way a kid uses a birthday gift card, quickly, impulsively, and on things he absolutely didn't need. It started small. Hey, can you spot me $40 until Friday? Here. And my card got flagged, can you cover dinner there? At first, I didn't think anything of it. I figured everyone needs help sometimes. And as siblings, it felt like the natural thing to do. The problem was that the money never came back. Ever. He always had some elaborate reason that sounded believable when he said it. His bank app glitched, a refund was pending, his check hadn't cleared, he lost his wallet, something came up. I let it slide for years, because arguing with him felt like arguing with a golden retriever who knocked over a vase, pointless and exhausting. But then the requests got bigger. Last year, he called and said he needed a little help with his car payment. I assumed it meant like $50. When he sent the amount, I nearly dropped my phone, but he sounded desperate, and I didn't want him to lose his car, so I paid it. 2 weeks later, he needed help again, then again. Then it became, "I'll pay you back at the end of the month," which never happened. Every time I tried to talk to him about budgeting, he'd wave me off. "You're good with money," he'd say, like it was some natural talent I was born with. No, I'd correct him. "I just know how to control myself." Huh. Well, that sounds miserable, he'd joke. It sounds financially stable, I'd reply. He'd laugh and switch the topic. I didn't realize how far things had gone until the day he came over wearing that watch. I had just come home from work, exhausted, and counting down the minutes to a hot shower and sleep. My phone buzzed. It was Marcus. Hey, can we talk real quick? Sure, what's up? I'm outside. I opened the door, confused because he never just dropped by unannounced. The moment he walked in, I noticed the watch. It wasn't subtle. It gleamed under the hallway light like it was trying to blind me. It looked expensive enough to have its own security detail. Of course, he grinned like a kid who got into the cookie jar. I got a crazy deal on it, he said, holding out his wrist. Couldn't pass it up. Before I could respond, he cleared his throat. Anyway, I'm short on rent this month. Can you help? I blinked at him slowly. Rent, I repeated. Yeah, just this once, he said confidently, as if the words carried any meaning. Marcus, you just bought a watch. But it was a deal, he insisted, genuinely baffled that I didn't understand. It would have been dumb not to buy it, I stared. You chose a watch over rent? I mean, I figured I'd work something out, right? His version of working something out usually involved my bank account. For the first time in years, I didn't default to yes. I didn't cave. I didn't feel guilty. I'm not covering your rent, I said calmly. You make more than me, Marcus. You need to manage your money. His face twisted like I'd stabbed him. Wow, he said. So that's how it is. You're abandoning me. I'm not abandoning you, I said. I'm setting boundaries. He stormed out like I'd committed a crime. 2 hours later, my mom called. And it wasn't a gentle what happened call. No. She jumped straight into yelling, How could you let your brother struggle like that? He's family. You know he gets overwhelmed. Mom, I said, trying to keep my voice level, he makes 6 figures. Loon, that doesn't mean he knows how to manage it, she shot back. That's not my responsibility. He needs you. He needs a budget. She hung up on me. For a week, both she and Marcus ignored me completely. I tried calling to explain, but it was pointless. They were both so convinced I'd done something terrible, all because I stopped being his hotline for financial emergencies he created himself. And for a brief moment, I wondered if I was being too harsh. Maybe I should have helped just one last time. Maybe I was being cold. That doubt lasted right up into the phone call that changed everything. My aunt called me out of nowhere. She sounded genuinely worried. Honey, your mother said Marcus is in financial trouble and you refused to help. Is everything okay? I sighed. Do you want the short version or the full truth? The truth, she said, so I told her. The watch, the overspending, his income, the years of loans, the car payments, the rent situation, all of it. She went dead silent. He makes how much? She asked. I told her. She gasped so loudly I had to hold the phone away. Within 48 hours, the entire extended family knew the real story, and suddenly, my mom's version didn't hold up, not even close. People started calling her, asking why she was enabling Marcus, why she was guilt-tripping me, why she thought it was normal for me to support a grown man with a higher salary. My mom had no answers, and for the first time in a long time, she couldn't paint me as the bad guy. And that was before things got even messier. My mom didn't call me right away, even after the family started asking questions. Instead, she went quiet for a couple of days, which honestly worried me more than the yelling did. Silence from my mom usually meant she was either thinking or planning, and I couldn't tell which direction this particular situation was headed. Meanwhile, Marcus wasn't quiet at all. Once my money was officially off the table, he pivoted to the next logical targets. Our parents. He showed up at their house asking for money, claiming he was on the brink of eviction, starving, barely scraping by. He painted this dramatic picture of his life falling apart, conveniently skipping the part where he blew half a paycheck on a watch so shiny it could distract a pilot. He told them his car was about to be repossessed. He told them creditors were harassing him. He told them he had no groceries. He told them rent was overdue. He didn't tell them he had a closet full of high-end sneakers or a fridge full of subscription meal kits he forgot he signed up for. He didn't mention the concert tickets he bought a week earlier or the random charges from online stores. He definitely didn't mention the watch. And my parents, being my parents, believed him. They wrote him a check on the spot. But even that wasn't enough because he came back 2 days later asking for more. And when they asked where the first batch of money went, he shrugged and said it wasn't his fault, he was behind on everything. By the third request, my parents started noticing the cracks. They asked why his rent was always late if he had a good job. He said the landlord was raising prices randomly. They asked why he couldn't cut out luxuries. He said he didn't buy anything unnecessary. They asked why he needed so much money if he just got paid. He said his paycheck was smaller than expected. Excuses piled on top of excuses, and none of them made sense. My parents aren't dumb, they just have blind spots when it comes to him, but even their blind spots have limits. My mom finally called me after one particularly chaotic night where Marcus got into an argument with my dad about his spending. Her voice was small, defeated. I didn't know he was like that. Mom, I said gently. This has been going on for years. She sighed. He said you abandoned him. He said you didn't care if he ended up homeless. He makes more than I do, I reminded her. He's not homeless. He's irresponsible. She didn't say anything for a while. Then she whispered something I never expected to hear. I think we made it worse. Your father and I, we always cleaned up after him. Hearing her say that out loud was surreal and sad, because it was true. Even when Marcus dug his own hole, they were the ones pulling him out. What do we do? She asked. You stop giving him money, I said, and let him deal with the consequences. She exhaled shakily, like the idea physically hurt. But she agreed. The next time Marcus asked for money, my parents said no. I wasn't there, but later my dad told me Marcus reacted like they'd betrayed him. He yelled, he called them terrible parents, he stormed out. He texted me 5 long paragraphs accusing me of turning them against him, which I ignored because he wasn't actually saying anything, just throwing tantrums in text form. And then karma stepped in. Without anyone funding his lifestyle, Marcus had to face reality. His rent was late, his credit cards were maxed out, his car payment was behind. All those emergencies he blamed on the universe were really his own decisions coming back like a stack of overdue bills. He tried selling some of his things, but half of them weren't worth what he thought they were. The watch, though, that watch saved him. He managed to sell it for enough to cover a chunk of what he owed. And trust me, the irony of him selling the exact thing that triggered all this wasn't lost on me. After that, he had to make actual changes. He stopped eating out every night, canceled subscriptions, went through his closet and sold old tech, started bringing his lunch to work. He even downloaded a budgeting app, something I suggested years ago, but apparently only became a good idea once his entire safety net disappeared. He still refused to talk to me for a while, though. In his mind, I betrayed him by saying no. That alone told me everything I needed to know about how he viewed our relationship. But with time, the storm calmed. Then one afternoon, out of nowhere, he showed up at my place again. No watch, no designer stuff, no dramatic entrance. Just Marcus, looking tired, but different, real. We sat down, and for the first time in a long time, he spoke honestly. I messed up, he admitted quietly. I didn't realize how bad I'd gotten with money. I didn't say anything. I didn't need to. He kept talking. I depended on you because I knew you'd say yes, and I depended on Mom because she always did too, but it wasn't fair. Any of it. He took a breath. I'm not asking for money. I just wanted to say I get why you stopped. It wasn't a perfect apology, but it was a start. And honestly, I felt lighter hearing it. Not because it erased anything, but because it meant he was finally growing up. These days, Marcus pays his own bills. He doesn't ask for handouts. He doesn't guilt trip me. He even picks up extra work when he needs to. And our relationship feels healthier without the financial strain constantly hanging over it. As for my mom, she's still adjusting to the new dynamic. She apologized too, in her own way. She hasn't pressured me to help Marcus since. She's finally starting to understand boundaries aren't cruelty, they're necessary. And me. I'm doing better than I ever have. My savings are stable, my stress is lower, and I don't flinch every time my phone buzzes, wondering if it's another emergency for my brother. This whole thing taught me the most unexpected lesson. Saying no doesn't make you heartless. Sometimes it's the only way things ever change. A week after Marcus apologized, things finally settled into something that felt normal. Not perfect, not magically healed, but balanced. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like I was carrying someone else's weight on my shoulders. And honestly, the freedom was strange at first. I didn't realize how much mental space I had been dedicating to worrying about his next crisis, his next call, his next request. Without that constant pressure, I had room to think, breathe, and plan my own life without interruption. It was around that time that my mom invited me over for dinner. Nothing dramatic, no hidden agenda, just dinner. When I showed up, she hugged me in a way she hadn't in a long time. A real hug. Not stiff, not rushed, not clouded by disappointment or tension. She held on for a few seconds longer than usual, and I think that alone said more than anything she could have explained. During dinner, things were calm. She didn't mention Marcus at first, and I didn't push it. We talked about work, about a recipe she wanted to try, about a show she started watching. It was simple, but it felt like a reset, the first step toward fixing something that had been broken for a long time. After we finished eating, she finally sighed and looked at me in that way moms do when they're pushing past their own pride. I didn't realize how much we put on you, she said quietly. You've always been stable, so we assumed you could handle everything. We shouldn't have done that. It wasn't a grand speech, but it was enough. I nodded. I'm not mad, Mom. I just couldn't keep doing it. I know, she said. And for once, I believe she actually did. Later that same evening, Marcus dropped by. Not for money, just to talk. He joined us at the table, and for the first time in months, the three of us sat together without tension buzzing between us. He looked tired, but calmer, like someone who had finally stopped running from reality. He fiddled with the sleeve of his sweatshirt before speaking. I talked to a financial advisor at work, he said. They've got this free program. It's helping. I didn't expect that. I don't think Mom did either. That's good, I said. He nodded. I'm trying. I know I should have done this sooner. There was a pause. Then he added, I also paid off one of my credit cards. Mom's eyes widened. Really? Yeah, he said almost shyly. I mean, I sold a bunch of stuff, but still. I looked at him, not as the brother who drained my wallet, not as the guy who always needed bailing out, but as someone finally climbing out of his own hole. Slowly, awkwardly, imperfectly, but climbing. And even though he didn't say it outright, I could tell he understood something important. He had taken advantage of me for years, and setting boundaries wasn't cruelty. It was the first thing that ever pushed him to take his own life seriously. After that night, things genuinely shifted. Marcus started budgeting. Like, actually budgeting. He sent me a picture of a spreadsheet he made. Messy, chaotic, color-coded in a way that didn't make much sense, but it was effort. Real effort. He picked up freelance gigs on weekends, started paying down debt, and cut back on impulsive purchases. His life wasn't magically fixed, but the direction had finally changed. He also didn't ask me for money again. Not once. Which, for Marcus, was basically a miracle. My mom stopped guilting me altogether. She even started calling Marcus out on his spending habits instead of turning a blind eye. It was a shock to both of us, honestly, but a good shock. And me. I finally felt like I could live my own life without carrying someone else's weight. One afternoon, a few weeks later, I was sitting on my couch reading when I got a text from Marcus. Marcus made another double payment on my card today. I'm like, me, nice. Marcus, feels kind of good. Me, told you. Marcus, shut up, bull. It was simple, but it made me smile. Because after everything we went through, the arguments, the guilt, the years of imbalance, here he was actually proud of himself. And honestly, I was proud of him too. Looking back, the whole situation taught me something I didn't expect. Sometimes you don't fix a relationship by giving more. Sometimes you fix it by stepping back, setting boundaries, and letting people face the consequences they've been dodging their whole lives. The story started with me being the responsible sibling, the one everyone leaned on without thinking twice. It ended with all of us learning something we should have understood a long time ago. Saying no doesn't make you selfish, it makes you sane. And sometimes it's the only thing that finally makes everyone grow.